Have you ever noticed that in English the names of meat and the names of the animals are different? I'll let Tom Scott continue the story.
In 1066, the Normans invaded England, and they generally spoke Norman or Picard. So the people who were eating meat more often referred to the food on their plate by the Anglo-Norman bœuf, beef, while those raising the animals referred to them by their Anglo-Saxon name, cow.
Take a look at this clip from a video from the Oversimplified channel. This video has more than 32 million views.
The Anglo-Saxon farmers working in the fields owned many cows, pigs and sheep, but once they were served up in a Norman banquet, they became beef, pork and mutton.
This is a video of the Open University from the Britannica website.
Words like cow, sheep and swine come from the English-speaking farmers, while the a la carte versions, beef, mutton and pork, come from the French-speaking toffs.
And this is a clip from a video from the Merriam-Webster dictionary in their Ask the Editor section.
Whereas ox and cow are from Old English, beef is from French. Deer is from Old English, but venison is from French. Calf is from Old English, but veal is from French. Whether we know it or not, we're expressing a fact about life in medieval England that's embedded in the words we use every day.
Even the French love this story.
Et les paysans qui s'occupaient des animaux les appelaient par leur nom anglo-saxon. Mais quand ces animaux se retrouvaient dans l'assiette des nobles, ils avaient un autre nom. C'est comme ça que pig devenait pork, le porc, cow devenait beef.
It's a compelling tale, isn't it? It explains feudalism, the names of our foods, and 1,000 years of linguistic history, all in one tidy vignette. I must have told this story 100 times. I used to tell it to my students when explaining where English words come from. It's such a well-known story. I've read it in academic books, it's online, and as you've seen in countless YouTube videos, and even related by ChatGPT. Anyone who has studied the history of English will know it, but it turns out that it's mostly bollocks. Or should I say bullocks? A cock and bull story. Yes, that's right. Like many far-fetched tales, there is a grain of truth to it, but for the most part, it's rubbish. By the way, I'm not knocking these channels. So Tom Scott has made hundreds of great videos. Inevitably, there's going to be the odd factual error. I, of course, would never make such a mistake. Let's have a look at some words for meat. The English peasants were in the fields with the animals, but the French aristocracy were at the table eating the meat. Oh dear. Yes, I have told this story in a previous video. I might even have done it twice. Okay, so what's the evidence that it's false? I did say that there was a grain of truth to it. Well, the Normans did invade in 1066, bringing over their language, and for 300 years, the aristocracy in England spoke French, or Anglo-Norman as it's called. The peasants continued speaking English. The peasants continued to call the animals cow, sheep, pig, but this is when the truth and the myth diverge. So many French words entered the English language after the Norman conquest that if you compare the English of 1066 and the 1390s, the time of Chaucer, it's almost a different language. In fact, it goes by a different name. The era before the Norman conquest is known as Anglo-Saxon or Old English, and after that date it's referred to as Middle English. I'll go into that more in a future video, but in simple terms, what the Norman conquest did was contribute a lot more words to the English language, French words. We've already seen that new words for meat enter the language, but French words sometimes replace the English word for the animal too. In Middle English, there wasn't this strict delineation between the word for the meat and the word for the animal as there is today. This separation only happened in the 1800s. So sometimes the word for the meat was used for the animal, and sometimes the word for the animal was used for the meat. Certainly it's true that there were class divisions, between the English peasantry and the French aristocracy, huge divisions, but how that plays out in our language relating to food is much more nuanced than the simplified story would have you believe. Beef. The first occurrence of the words beef, pork and mutton in the English language is from 1300, some 235 years after the Norman conquest. Here it is, I'll just quote the translation in modern English. They took with them in their ship geese and hens, pork, mutton and beef. This is from 1325. Beef is clearly being used to mean the animal. This is from 1523. More than 20,000 beasts, swine, beef, cows and muttons. Notice it also mentions mutton. This is Shakespeare. 1598. The Merchant of Venice. He mentions beef and muttons. This is the King James Bible, 1604. This is from 1669. Our beeves yield much butter, cheese and meat. Beeves, by the way, is the plural of beef. From 1844, the cook went on shore and shot a beef. I could go on. Mutton. This is from 1335. One sent him geese and hens, the other goats and mutton. From 1795. A mutton statelier than the rest. Thackeray, from 1839. A humble company of pious men, like muttons in a pen. So pork entered the English language around 1300, and then pork was recorded as the name of the living animal for hundreds of years, but less often than beef or mutton, probably because English already had a lot of words for pig. As well as pig, you have boar and swine and hog. Conversely, pig was used for the name of the meat sometimes. Now here is a recipe of an English cookbook called The Form of Curry, from 1330, and the recipe is for pigs in sauce sage, which translate to pigs, pork, in sage sauce. Pig was being used for the meat of the animal, although the term pork was also used in the same cookbook. The Anglo-Saxon word deer meant not only deer, but other beasts of the forest. Wilderness actually means place of wild beasts. These days, meat from deer is called venison, which comes from the Old French venaison, which originally referred to any edible hunted animal. You might call it game, so wild boar would also have been called venison. Only the aristocracy were allowed to hunt in royal forests across England, so it makes sense that they would use a French word. In fact, venison, venaison, can be traced to the Latin venatus, meaning to hunt. And if the French were sitting idly at the dinner tables in their castles, then why did they give so many new words to the animals in the field too? The English took the word cattle from French. It traces its origin back to the mid-12th century and comes from Old French châtel. And poultry is a name for edible birds, both living and dead, and that's from French too. And then there are the meats that kept the Anglo-Saxon name. Lamb is both the name of the animal, a baby sheep, and the name of the meat. We did not adopt the French word agneau. Duck is English and is both the name for the bird alive and for its meat. So is chicken, so is hen, although a young hen is called a pullet, which cognates with the French word poulet. We say goat, both for the animal and the meat. We don't use the French term chèvre. By the way, a side note here, while I was doing research for this video, I asked myself, what about rabbit? The French eat a lot of rabbit. What did the Anglo-Saxons call rabbit? And much to my surprise, I found out that there were no rabbits in Anglo-Saxon England. They are not native to Britain. So they were brought over from Sicily around 1170, and Sicily at that time was a Norman colony. So the Anglo-Saxons did not have a word for rabbit because they did not exist. In Middle English, the word for rabbit was cunny, rhymes with honey and money, and it comes from the old French word for rabbit, cornet. In modern French, they say lapin, and we say rabbit. Now, rabbit was originally the young of the species until it replaced cunny in the 17th century. Rabbit is also from French, but the reason rabbit replaced cunny in English is because cunny sounded too much like a rude word. Of course, I can't tell you what that word is. You'll have to use your imagination. Back to the main story. Now, furthermore, some meat words are Anglo-Saxon, such as ham. And you eat suckling pig, not suckling pork, and ox tongue and ox tail, not beef tail. The fish in the sea and in the river are called the same thing as the fish on your plate. Most fish have Anglo-Saxon names, and one common exception is salmon, which is from French. It's only in the 1800s when French cuisine started to become fashionable and recipes were compiled and codified with standard terms that we see the cementing of the words for meat and the words for the animal. Of course, the popular French recipes are going to have the French words for the meat. So yes, the French changed the name of the meat on the plate, but just about 800 years after the story suggests. Okay, so who's responsible for this fake story? Which rotten YouTuber can we roast for starting this dog's dinner of a theory? Well, the etymology police seek this man in connection with the crime. He's a Scotsman, about 250 years old, and he goes by the name of Sir Walter Scott. It was he who started the myth in his 1819 novel, Ivanhoe.
In the 12th century, at the close of the Third Crusade to free the Holy Land, a Saxon knight called Wilfrid of Ivanhoe undertook a private crusade of his own.
Let me quote you from the book. Nay, I can tell you more. Ox continues to hold his Saxon epithet, while he is under the charge of the serfs and bondsmen such as thou, but becomes beef, a fiery French gallant, when he arrives before the worshipful jaws that are destined to consume him. Mynheer Calf too becomes Monsieur de Vaux in the like manner. He is Saxon when he requires tendance and takes a Norman name when he becomes a matter of enjoyment. Sir Walter Scott, you complete and utter bastard. Your dubious tale launched 1,000 erroneous YouTube videos, blog posts, and much inaccurate output from AI language models. I sometimes think that the reason we have different names for the meat and the animal is because we don't want to be reminded of the fact that the beef steak on our plate is in fact a dead cow, and saying pig meat reminds us of pigs, and we are one step away from the slaughter of a noble beast if we say pork. It's just a theory, and well, I would say that because I'm a vegetarian, but anyway, let me know your thoughts about that in the comments. If you want to learn more from this honest and truthful language detective, then do sign up for my newsletter, link in the description, or become a Patreon of this channel. Wisdom guaranteed. Have a beautiful day. Bye.